which is fine. And we began last week at the very end of this year discussing the idea of harchakos, and we just very briefly mentioned that the idea that there is an isser of lo sikru legalis erva. There's an isser of a person conducting himself in a way with any erva, any woman that he's usher to, conducting himself in a manner that might lead to an isser via mamish. And we went to the Rambam. We said that's part of the isser, the chi of mamish, and we mentioned that by one's own wife, when she's in nidas, the Chazal found it necessary to put up extra safeguards more than by other arayas. Number one, because of the fact that he's so comfortable and familiar with his own wife, and number two, because there's no isser yichud. With anyone else's, any other woman who's usher to this isser yichud, and with his own wife there's no isser yichud. So in place of that, they make many harchakos. That's what we'd say. Okay. So first of all, let's try to go through some of the details. I just want to say that you can't make any diyukim here, meaning you can't say that if I don't mention that something is usher, it doesn't mean, well, okay, it must be mutter, because we can go through a list of everything that's, all the harchakos, everything that's usher. No, not necessarily. We'll see what we can do. Okay, so first of all, for sure, any form of physical contact, even if it's not an affectionate way of touching, it's a negiah she'eina shel chiba. Even the way a man might touch another man, give you a slap in the back or a handshake or whatever it may be, anything of that sort is asur b'ishto nida. And even if there's an intervening garment, meaning even if she's wearing a blouse or a coat or anything, to touch against her body with even though there's the begadim are intervening, is not permissible, or even if the person is wearing gloves, it's not permissible to do that. Perhaps we'll discuss at the very end, or I guess we just mentioned it briefly now, b'makom choli, in a place where, say, a woman is ill and she needs help, and only her husband can provide that help. In the most classical case, typical case, is a woman who's in labor, and they're trying to go to the hospital, maybe they have to climb down a few flights of steps to get to the car, get to the cab, whatever it is, and she is having trouble walking. She's talking about she's already in a state of nidus, and she's having trouble walking. So very often it's just not practical. There's nobody else that could help her. So then the husband would be allowed to touch, as long as he doesn't touch directly. He'd be allowed to hold her, either put on gloves like these surgical gloves, these plastic gloves, or just make sure to hold by a coat or a jacket or a sleeve of some sort. Or for that matter, sometimes it comes out a woman after childbirth, for example. Let's say she needs a little bit of help getting around, and she needs to be pushed in a wheelchair, whether it's in the hospital, but there's, right now there's nobody available, no nurse or anything available. They just want, or afterwards. So as long as he's not touching her, he's pushing the wheelchair. So it's negiah yedei baracha. That's mutter when she's a chola. It's not mutter stam. But if a woman is a chola and there's nobody else available to help her, then the husband could do that. Okay. So it also means a person can't touch her clothing. The husband can't touch her clothing. That is, even when it's not directly on her. Meaning, something like this when it's hanging down, even to touch over here, where she's not. There's no skin there. There's no body to grab that or touch that. Is not permissible. Some say you should even be careful not to brush against his clothing, to brush against her clothing. It could be a problem at when a woman's wearing like a very broad type of dress, maybe a petticoat or whatever. It could be at if it's their own chasna, if it happens to be a chupas nida, and it gets a little more tricky, not avoiding the gown. But for a husband to handle his wife's clothing when she's not wearing them is mutter to do, and it says before she even begadim that are meluchlach with dam nida, that have on a dam nida on it, he's allowed to do that as long as she is not wearing it. Okay, for that matter, it's also usher for him to touch her with an object, and he wants to get her attention, and so to take a little stick or something and tap her on the shoulder if it's in a place where, for whatever reason, he just can't call to her, or take a stick or take a pen or something and just tap against her. He's not allowed to do that while she is in it.
Well, in a culture, she wouldn't be able to do on him or the other way around.
Well, it would, only if it was not shy by somebody else, so to do it without touching directly. That's it might be a little trickier with throat culture not to touch, but.
What about feeding her?
Leave that for the Q&A afterwards. Or at least the Q. I'm not sure it's going to be an A. Okay. Now, to pass an object from one to the other is usher to do, even if it's a long object that it's probably not gonna end up touching each other through it. They're not allowed to do it. It includes the keys or you're at the coat room at a chasna and you're or wherever in the shul, and if she's in need and you want to be polite and take her coat off the hanger, you may be polite, but then you might find yourself holding onto her coat and saying, now what do I do with it? So put it down on a chair or something. Like you can't pass it to her or pass her a phone or whatever it may be. Or a baby for that matter. One spouse is not, when the wife's in need, one spouse can't pass the baby to the other. The only tzad heter is a baby that goes on their own, a baby that's old enough that's sort of, let's say the husband's holding the baby and the baby sees mommy and they lunge over. Not just chayno seitzatzmo. This is such a heter brought down, discussed, like we have a Hilchos Shabbos, that to carry a child that's able to walk is not an issa d'oraisa, it's issa d'rabbanan, so some apply it to here too, that memela if the child really could walk, so there's no issa to pass it, but that the poskim by and large don't accept. But if the baby actually goes on their own, so that you're not even handing it, the baby's just going, you could sort of just like relax your grip and let your wife grab onto the baby. It's that heter they do say. Now, a couple is not supposed to lift anything together. Besides not passing from them, but let's say they want rearranging the room for a Shabbos or Sheva Brachos or any reason in the world. So they need two people to move the table. They're typically not allowed to do that. Now it's interesting, Rav Moshe has a tshuva in there, Moshe about it, where he asks it based on a Mishnah in Maseches Zovim, making a cheshbon of transfer of tumah from one to the other, and based on that, which is interesting that should affect harchakas, because I'm not worried about tumah here. I mean, that's not the idea. The idea is something that shouldn't come to touching, come like dechiba, etc. Much based on that. But many poskim say simply it's usher because it's a form of it's not better than passing something from one hand to the other. Lamaisa, at the end of the day, there are a number of poskim that say though that b'makom tzorech you could do it. Let's say a heavy object where it's impossible for one person to do it or extremely difficult. Before they had kneeling buses and she's trying to get the baby stroller or the baby in the stroller perhaps into the bus, and it's just very difficult for her alone or difficult for him alone. So there are a number of poskim that are matir to do the b'makom tzarech, and even in Rav Shimon Eider's Sefer he even brings that Rav Moshe himself was matir b'makom tzarech to do that despite the tshuva, but he was matir b'makom tzarech. There are those that don't like it, but I just had Didi Habi Uvda once who had a ma'aseh many years ago, shortly after we moved to Chicago, and there was some flooding going on in our basement, and which is pretty typical for Chicago, and we had a piece of furniture down there, a couch I think it was, which was going to get, at least wet and maybe ruined or partially ruined. It certainly wasn't going to get better from the water, and we wanted to be able to lift it onto some blocks or something. So I remember calling one of the poskim. It was early in the morning, but I knew that he was up. He was there before davening, and I called him, and he did not want to be mekel, even though it was early in the morning, like it was 6 in the morning. I couldn't just ask a neighbor to come over, but he did not want to be mekel, and I argued a little bit. So he said, "Look," he said, "No, if you hold this mutter, so you want to be matter, but he didn't. But I later saw in many farms that weren't even available. They came out later, a psukim quarter from a lot of the Gedolim, that they are matter in situations like that. Okay, what happened?
So Nikia only has a hester for Kollel, but others, like Shavta and others, the three have a hester for Cyrus? Or
Yeah, first,
are they all universal?
no, first of all, again, Nigia, I did the Veracha, right? Not direct Nigia, the Nigia, the Veracha. On the Makom Chol, yes, that would not be for Makom Hester or anything. That touching is much worse, even though you're not touching the skin directly, but you're touching her. That's
Kollel is the only hester that's mentioned.
Yes.
What about closing a table, adding a leaf to the table and you close it, or you push one side to the other side?
It's very similar to moving the table together. Yeah, I think it's the same, whatever the rule is there. Okay, now if one of the spouses is holding the baby, so question is, can the other one give something to the baby? So to feed the baby, let's say your wife's holding the baby, and for you to feed the baby, which is a long process, not just a 1, 2, 3 thing, that definitely shouldn't do it, because it's very hard then while she's holding the baby or he's holding the baby, that not going to end up touching. Just a question of giving the baby medicine or something, or putting a pacifier in his mouth, that there are poskim that are matir to do something like that, a short thing. She's holding, because the baby is a separate entity, right? The baby is not, it's a person. So you're putting something in the baby's mouth. It's not like, it's not like she's holding a pocketbook and you're putting something in your pocketbook, which you should not do. But she's holding a baby. The baby's his own person. So so some amount to do that, that would be reasonable. But anything of chiba, like to kiss the baby while your wife's holding the baby or something like that, or vice versa, definitely should not be done, because it's inherently an act of chiba. You're not showing the chiba to your wife, or she's not showing it to you, you're showing it to the baby, but that's already an act of chiba, which could much more likely to lead to other things. Okay, now a number of poskim write though that it's mutter, it is mutter to walk with a baby that could walk, but they could use a little help. He or she is at an age where they need a little help walking, and the baby should be in the middle, and each one to hold the baby's hand, as long as the baby has his or her feet on the ground and is actually walking. Although you're supporting him, is okay to lift the baby, or swing the baby, or anything like that, or you're in a rush, you just want to move things along. That for sure is not okay. You have to make sure you're not going to do that. But as long as the baby keeps his feet on the ground and is doing the walking, then that would be okay to do. Putting something on one's wife's lap or taking one's wife's lap, a number of poskim say that one should not do that. On the other hand, if let's say your wife is sitting on a couch or a bed or something, and you want to give her something, you could put something on the couch next to her, or take something off. If she wants to give it to you, she could put it down on the couch, and you could take it off of the couch, even though she's sitting on the couch, but not directly off of her lap, or certainly not from her hand or anything of that sort. Shaila comes up by a couple that is offered the schus of being kvater, the bris, when the ones to bring the baby in. It's typically the way it works is the wife takes the baby first from the baby's mother and hands the baby to her husband, and the husband brings him into the base medrash or wherever the bris is going to be. So the question is, what happens if she's in nida? Is there any heter to do that? And sometimes they're offered it, and they're embarrassed to say that she's in nida or to turn it in. Or maybe they davka want, and some say it's a schus to have children. People davka often try to be mechabed other people that don't have children to do this. So there's a lot of discussion in the poskim about it. Lamaisa, the best way is just if you're doing basically out of the public eye, that the wife should simply put the baby down on, the baby's usually on a pillow, and then put the baby down safely, and the husband pick up the baby rather than hand it. There are mekilim, let's say you are in front of people, there are mekilim to use like a double pillow, instead of having the baby on one pillow, have the baby on two pillows, and the husband just takes the top pillow with the baby. Even again, it's not something we would normally do, but some mekel b'makom for kvater. And there is even there's a tzad in one of the Gedolei poskim to be matter just to do it directly, but lamaisa, the best thing is not to rely on the heterim, and to try, if you have accepted kvat already and your wife's in nida, or if you very much want to accept it, whatever it is, to do it in a way by simply putting the baby down. Okay, it is not permissible either to throw something. One can't throw something to one's spouse. It's an extension already. We said you can't hand something, so we're saying not only can you hand something, you can't even throw something. To just throw it up, let's say you want to give her the car keys and there's no place to put them down. So some say it's okay to do that, to throw it up, and she grabs it out of the air. You didn't throw it to her, or she's not like the recipient of your koach. Your koach is still going in the upward direction, and she just grabs from the air. Some amount to that, others say that even that one should try to avoid.
Ladies, will they catch when it's coming down because your koach is up and the down is gravity? That's why it's not. That's why it's not your koach. The koach is you do it up. It's another force that's pushing it down.
Maybe that's not good. Maybe this has been.
That's what my father was saying.
I see. Okay. In either case, he may have told you that it's still not so recommended to do that.
Throw it closer to her, even though.
Yeah, she's not going to catch it. She's going to land somewhere near her, and that's fine. As long as it lands and then she picks it up, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, so those are all one basic topic of touching, passing, throwing, etc., etc., etc. Okay, there are a number of harchakos in the area of eating, and some of this actually has a source in a Sugya Masechah Shabbos, in the first parak of Shabbos, about lo yochal hazavim, they heard a lover. So there are a number of harchakos that are established. First of all, when the woman's in nida, so the couple can't eat together at the same table unless there's some sort of heker on the table, some sort of reminder, something on the table, similar to the halacha of two people are eating at one table and one wants to eat milchis, wants to eat fleishiks, that there has to be a heker on the table. So the heker has to be, the poskim say, something that's gavoa k'tzas, something that has a little bit of height so that it's noticeable, not a very low thing. There's no exact shear. Some suggest the shear of a tefach, but I'm not sure if there's a marker for that shear. Something that they would notice, and it has to be pretty much in between them, so that again it serves as not as a barrier, not as a it's not a barbed wire fence that stops them from passing anything or touching or whatever or taking each other's food, but it's a reminder to that. Now, so the standard hecker is to put something on the table. Another possibility is to eat on separate placemats, or assuming they don't normally do that when they're eating. So to take separate placemats, or one to eat on a tablecloth and one to eat on the table itself, that they could do even at the same table. Beis Yosef brings down a heter of, he doesn't bring in Shulchan Aruch, but he mentions a heter of changing seats, that if they always have set seats when she's not in Nida, so when she's in Nida they switch seats. It's not brought in Shulchan Aruch, interestingly, but it's brought in the Beis Yosef, such a possibility. The shaila is this only necessary when it's just the two of them, or even if there are other people at the table? So that is a shaila in the poskim. Machlokas poskim, it's better to be machmir when possible, and it's not that difficult because a hecker doesn't have to be something that's bolate, something you don't have to take a boot and then put it on the table. It could be something that sort of blends in, that the other person sitting there won't necessarily know that it's not usually there, or that it's there for hecker. It's just it could be something something that would not stand out. So it's better to be machmir, but what is makel on this is yesh lo mi lismoch, is what there are poskim that makel on this, since one could rely on this if necessary, and certainly when eating out, eating by somebody else's house, and you're not just the two of you. I mean, you're eating, you invited someone else's table, and they're at the table as well. So then you certainly could be not have to worry about having a hecker on the table at that time. Okay, so that's one thing, a hecker on the table. Second thing is that there's an issue of ka'ara achas, which means that the two of them, the husband and wife, when she's in Nida, are not allowed to eat out of the same plate. Now, eat out of the same plate means literally a plate from which you would take the food and put it into your mouth. So like to share, to go to a restaurant and buy one serving and one plate, or one bag of French fries or something, and just to take each one, take out of it, or one little dish of whatever, and each one takes, that is not okay to do. We'll see in a minute an extension of that Ramesh writes about, but if it's a serving platter where the derech is for put a platter of chicken or whatever it is, a bowl of vegetables or rice, where that's the derech, that you put it down for everybody to then take a portion onto their own plate, so that's fine. They're allowed to both take from the same serving plate. A serving platter, some say even if they don't have their own plate, even if they, it's best to take it and put it down. Some want to say, bimatra, even if there's, let's say it's a bowl of whatever it may be, which is meant for many people to take from, and that they take and eat directly. So that's better to put it down, though, to have a dish or something in front of you and put it down first, and then eat it from that. Now, so Ramesh and Tshuva extends the idea of ka'ara achas not just to the case, like I said, that you order one helping of French fries, which is typically meant for one person, and you're both eating it, but even to split that. Even to order to take something, Rosh gives the example, I believe, of a bukla challah roll, or I'm not sure if he gives the example, but another example is a can of soda, something that's typically meant for one person. It's one person's portion, and they want to split it, and they'll split it, they'll buy it, or they'll take it and then split it right away. And Rav says you can't do that, because sharing something like that, which is designed and meant and typically intended for one person, is inherently ka'ar achas, so it doesn't help. You break it in half, it's like two halves of the ka'ar achas they're eating, which is perhaps a bit of a chiddush, an extension of the halacha, but that's what he writes the tshuva in the first chelik of Yeridea. Probably not. I mean, I can't quote my name, Chokim, but it is a chiddush, it's an extension of the halacha, so I would imagine, but I can't quote you by name Dafka Chokim. I think it's something that we typically try to. It's one of Ramesh's old shuvas in the first chelik of Yeridea.
And you're separating, you're putting it on different plates, different cups.
Yeah.
For the two of them.
But it's right. But it's something that's intended. It's meant to be. It was meant to be eaten by one person. Okay. Now another restriction, another one of the harchakas within food is called the isser of a husband eating shiurei Michel. This applies only in one direction, that the husband is not allowed to eat or drink his wife's leftovers, assuming she's still in the room. She ate from whatever it may be, and now she's finished. So she's totally finished. She's not eating from that anymore, but she's still there. She's still there. So for him to eat her, to take it and eat it or drink it is not permissible. If she leaves the room while she's out of the room, it is permissible. Now, when it comes to a drink, even if she's still in the room, if he takes the drink and he pours it out, no, this is what I guess, if we're going with Rav Moshe's Chiddush, we said before, it would have to be something which is not necessarily meant for one person, or something which is not necessarily ka'ara achas inherently, but so to take a drink and pour it into another cup would be mutter, even if she's still there. And by the same token, a food portion as well, if it's the type of thing which is affected by the plate, let's say a portion of maybe rice or green peas or something like that, which while it's on the plate, it takes one form. When you pour it over to another plate, it pours, it loses its shape, and then regains the shape of the other plate. So there would be a heter also of eating it on another kara. If it's a piece of chicken or a meatball or something, or a piece of bread, and to take it off our plate and put it on your plate would not be a heter, because it doesn't need the plate. The plate doesn't affect it. It is not affected by the plate. The shape and the structure of the food is exactly the same, so that would not work. Ramesh says it's also that would not work for shiri Michel. But if it's something like I said, like a drink or a food which is similar to a drink, that it does change its shape when it's transferred one thing to another, then it would be okay. Now this is, like we said, is only for the husband to eat the wife's leftovers. Another heter, by the way, would be if somebody else ate from it in between, one of the kids or somebody ate from it, and then he could eat the rest of it. The other way around, the wife is always allowed to eat her husband's leftovers, assuming it's not a shiv karacha. She's allowed to eat his leftovers. If a husband's unaware, he sees something on the table, he's unaware that his wife was eating from it, so she doesn't have to tell him. Because the whole idea is that if he eats her leftovers, it's not spiritual or magical that he eats her leftovers is going to have some sort of a romantic effect on him. It's that he knows that it's hers and he's eating her food, which is something you typically don't eat other people's leftovers, but your own spouse you would eat because of a form of chiba. But if he doesn't know it's hers, then she doesn't have to tell him. If he knows it's hers, he doesn't realize she's in need, or he forgot she's in need, or she hadn't mentioned that she's in need, then she would have to stop him because he knows it's her leftovers, so that's Gorim the Kirva, and she's in Nida. In fact, he doesn't know she's in Nida. If anything, it just makes it worse. But if he knows she's in Nida, he just doesn't know it's her leftovers, then she wouldn't have to stop him from eating.
If the spouse wants her husband to finish the food she's done, the only way that she can do this, she leaves the room, or is there another way?
Well, or if it's the type of thing that changing the plate would be, otherwise...
Chicken, she has to leave it.
When she leaves the room, then he would, or somebody else, then he would, one of the kids to take a bite or something like that. Okay, now there's an isser also called Mezigas HaKos, which is broader than just kos. It applies to serving foods and drinks, which means that it's also for either one to serve the other one food directly while the wine's anida, for her to bring a plate and put it down right in front of him in the normal fashions where he could from where he would take it, start eating, is not okay. You would have to use some sort of a shinui. The shinui could either be she's carrying to him right before she puts it down, so she moves it over to her left hand and puts in front of him. In front of him, she switches to her left hand, puts it down in front of him. Then that would be a shinui, that would work. Or if she doesn't put it down right in front of him, she puts it down a little where he has to reach over now and get it. So she didn't serve him directly. Now, if there's a glass in front of him, she shouldn't, pour him a drink directly while the glass is directly in front of him, or add sugar or milk to his coffee, which is sitting right in front of him. Now, some say that there is a sheet that comes from Zichron that even if it's not directly in front of him there, but he's within his vision. If it's in his presence, then she shouldn't prepare it for him and serve it, even if she's going to serve with a shino or something like that. There's a day like that, even that shouldn't be done. As I said, shouldn't be done in front of him. If he's not there yet, and she wants to put his plate down on the table and say, dinner's served, and he comes and it's right there, and she did it without a shit, that's fine. When he's shalom b'fanav, even though he comes and it's there, that's fine. But in front of him, you'd have to use a shino or what the other idea that I said. And this goes both ways. This is the wife serving the husband serving the wife. This is not limited to this is not a one-way street. Now, in addition, there's an isser to send her kos shel yayin. This is where specifically wine is an isser to send her a kos of wine. Now, sender means even if you don't put it right in front of her, or even if you don't, even somebody else, even to give somebody else a cup and say, pass this to a cup of wine, and say, pass this to my wife, should not be done. So I have written down here from Rabbi Eider's Sefer in Hilchos Nida. You can look it up. Perek Harach Reish Chaf Aleph, the B'Shem Reb Moshe, that any kos shel bracha, even if it's not wine, even if it's chamar medina, He said, according to what he brings from Russia, wine would be usher even if it's not a kosher bracha, and kosher bracha is also usher even if it's not wine. So certainly if it's grape juice for a kiddush or something like that. What happens? Stam grape juice. So look, typically we treat grape juice as wine for most halachas. Possible exception of the Dalit Kosos, because maybe it doesn't have all the aspects of wine, but we make the same bracha as wine, and we do make many people in the kiddush or Havdalah on wine, and any other time we use wine. So the Char would apply to grape juice as well. Now here this. If it's being used as a if it was kosher bracha, Chamar Medina is kosher bracha.
While it's being used as a kosher bracha.
Right. Right. Okay. So now this is only from the husband to the wife. There's no for the wife to pay. So this comes up. A little bit could be challenging at kiddush. If the husband makes kiddush and he wants to send his wife a cup, so either simply makes kiddush and whatever, and then puts down the wine when he's finished, and if she's sitting right next to him, she'll just reach over and take it. Or let's say she's not right next to you at the other end of the table, so if he fills a number of cups and just starts passing it around. He fills. There are 5 people at the table, including his wife, and he fills 5 cups, but he doesn't designate anything for her or anything. He just hands the tray to the person next to him and takes it and passes it around, but he's not specifically sending a kos to her. That would also be okay to do. Okay, so that's pretty much the halachas with regard to eating and drinking at the harchakas. Now, there's halacha when it comes to beds. First of all, a couple, while she's in need, a couple is not allowed to lie down on or certainly sleep on the same bed. And this is even if they're both fully dressed and even if not touching, even if they say it's a wide bed, and even if it's not her bed or his bed, it's just, let's say they're in a hotel room and there's only one bed and it's a very wide bed. They could easily keep their distance. They can even put something in between them, and be dressed and have separate blankets. It's usher to do it. It's usher to be on the same bed while she's in nida. And even if they're in two totally separate beds, but there has to be a certain distance between them. Now, so here there are different shades. The basic halacha is just that they shouldn't touch. So that, like, if push comes to shove, and you're in a place where, no pun intended, you're in a place where there's a lot of room in the, you're in somebody, a guest room for Shabbos, something like that. As long as they're not touching, then it's okay. But l'chatchila, when it's your own house or when you have a choice, there should be a greater distance between them, not just a crack. There are different shittas brought down between them exactly. Some say that it's just enough. Some say it should be an amma between them, between the two beds, which is close to 2 feet, 22 inches or so. Others say it should just be enough that if one of them would roll over in their sleep, they would not roll over onto the other bed. They would sooner fall off the bed than roll over onto the other bed. Others say it's enough that the blanket shouldn't touch. So different shittas brought down. But when setting up a bedroom, it's good to try to be machmer and have them an amma apart, or have, even what many people do, which is double right, to have even a little piece of furniture, a night table or something in between them. It's derech hatznius to do that. Now, in terms of the wife's bed, so while the wife is in nida, the husband's not even allowed to sit on her bed, and she's not on it. He's not even allowed to sit in her bed, certainly not allowed to lie in it or sleep in it. And that's even if it's shelo b'faneha. Now, to sit on it, he could do when she's not there. But to sleep or to lie in it, he can't do when she's not there. I should be correct. When I say he's not there, if she's simply not in the room, he's not even allowed to sit in her bed. If she's out of town, then he's allowed to sit in her bed. He's still not supposed to lie in her bed, sleep in her bed, even if she's out of town. But if she's out of town, he's allowed to sit on her bed while she's in nida, but not to lie in it. And while she's in town, even if she's not b'fanav, he's not allowed to even sit in her bed. The other way around, his bed, she is allowed to sit on his bed, even if he's b'fanav, as long as he's not on it. As long as he's not on the bed, she's allowed to sit on his bed. She's not allowed to lie in his bed unless he's not in the room. If he's not in the room, then even though he's in the next room, she's allowed to lie in his bed. But to lie in his bed in front of him, that Chacham are afraid would be a darga of being goring mochiba. But as long as he's not in the room, it's okay for her to lie in the bed. See, the idea is that for the man is the one who we typically are more choshish for to be aroused. So that's why there are greater restrictions for him being in her bed. He can't even sit on it unless she's out of town. He can never lie in it, etc., etc. For her, it's only sitting on his bed, is nothing, and even lying on his bed, we're not afraid of her. We're afraid just if he sees her. So as long as he's not in the room, it would be okay.
If she's sitting or lying on her bed, is the husband allowed to, let's say he wants to give her non-put clothing, put it on the bed.
Yes, it could be on the bed without, not on her, but on the bed, yes. Yes. Okay, now if
She puts her laundry on her bed, you just put it away, you probably can't, right?
she puts your laundry in her bed,
Yeah.
could you take it off of her bed?
Yeah, do that.
Yes. Okay. If the wife has a specific pillow or blanket, which is it's thick as hers, then also he's not allowed to use it. Sometimes they all look exactly the same, and if they get mixed up, and nobody even knows the difference. But it's good to keep them separate and to be aware. And certainly, if you're aware that this is her blanket, the pillow, he's not supposed to use it while she's Anita, and she shouldn't use his in his presence. She shouldn't sleep on his pillow or use his blanket to sleep with in his presence. Okay, so what could happen sometimes if the people are in a place where they're guests somewhere and they're only offered one bed, so then somebody's going to be sleeping on the floor, and figured out who it is. Okay, now a man and his wife, while she's in Nida, are not allowed to sit together on one, say one small seat or couch even, unless it's something that's attached to the ground, like a park bench, which is actually screwed down to the ground, then it would be okay. Or if it's something that's very heavy, so that it doesn't move at all, very very heavy bench, so if it's not screwed down to the ground, but it doesn't move at all by anybody when you sit down, when you get up, it doesn't move. Or if there's somebody else sitting in between them, then it would be okay, even if it does move a little. But if there's actually a human being, a person sitting in between them, some hold even to have a chayfetz in between them, even an object in between them is okay, but better when it's not necessary to be machmer in that. Now, in a car, just let's say sit in the back seat of a car, and there's one bench. Shri Moshe writes in the Tshuva that it's mutter there because that's similar to like b'chubal karka. It's the bench is the part of the car. It's similar to being attached to the ground, as long as that there's enough room that they're not touching. Meaning, if three people in the back of a car, and the husband right next to the wife is not a good idea at all. It's almost impossible without touching. So if it's a question of someone. Third person is her brother or something or whatever, so she just arrange it that he should sit in between them. Or if it's a stranger, then there's really no good eitzah, because to have the stranger in between them is not a good idea. His wife's sitting against a stranger, and the other way is not mutter either. So you've got to figure something else out. Okay, if it's a very big.
Go into the car in that situation.
Yeah.
The taxi. Let's see, you take the taxi.
So at least maybe to get something to put in between them, take something like this, something to.
The clothing are touch.
I don't know. So somebody should ask to sit in the front.
Someone else in the front. That's the clothing comes up.
Typically it's us. I mean, I know is it till what point? Meaning, if it's going to be a hefsim ruba, they're going to miss their flight somewhere. I don't know.
They should take another taxi.
Yeah.
That's a shot.
Yes. Okay. Okay, now it's brought that the couple's not supposed to go on a pleasure trip together. So the way I understood the definition, Moshe heard a number of times from Michel first, that the idea is when they're basically not going anywhere specific. They're just driving together. The driving. That's the matara. That's the tachlis. Just go for a ride together. But if they're going anywhere, it's okay. Even if they're going somewhere that they can actually enjoy themselves, but some sort of permissible activity, it's okay to we're talking about riding in a car together when they're not touching, like just two in the car and the seats are separate. No question of touching. It's just a question of the pleasure to go for a ride just for the sake of a ride. Not allowed to do, because it's a separate issur of teal. It's called teal, but it's only teal, as I said, if they're only going. The ride itself is the end goal. If the end goal is to get somewhere, then that would be okay. Right, that's right. That's right. To walk together, we don't ask her walking together, or even walking at a place where there's some sort of entertainment or some sort of distraction, whatever it is. That's okay to do.
And that's true by bus, by train.
If just taking, a train ride. So no, it's not. So it's not necessarily, unless they happen to be the only ones on the train, which is probably not going to be the case. So it's only driving alone. To drive with other people, especially if there be someone else in between them, especially if they're sure that would be okay on a bus or a train. On a small boat, it says it's not okay. A small rowboat there, even if it's something, even if it's not sitting on the same, but it moves a lot. That they're not supposed to go if they're just rowing somewhere for for pleasure, whatever, not supposed to do. But on a train, a plane. I mean, nobody takes a plane ride just for the fun of it. But you might take a train ride just to enjoy it. So that would be okay.
You said taking a walk just for the sake of taking a walk.
That might so we allowed to.
We do it.
Yes.
So even if it's a walk on the boardwalk late at night, that's
Yeah, as long as Chacham ain't a barosha. Not a situation where he's going to be Megara the Yetzer Hara or something. But otherwise, yeah.
So it's not to drive.
Staff could
This
drive.
is the other thing.
Right, or again, as I said, like Lu Yitzur, there would be nobody in the train, and there'd like be nobody there. I don't know. I think it would be the same thing, but it's
One's walking better.
because the walk, it's not the same form of traveling. There are osir walking, but it's not. They're just each one going on their own energy. It's like in a sense they're separate. They're not both being taken by one force. Okay, there's an issue of making the bed for each other, but first of all, it's only b'fanav, only if the other spouse is there, and many learn it's only something to prepare it for sleep, to make the bed in the morning just to straighten it up. When dafka not for sleeping, you're making the bed so the room should look nice, and when you need to go to sleep, you're going to have to pull back the blanket. That's okay. The isser is preparing it for sleep, like pulling back the covers or fluffing up the pillows or putting the pillows in place for sleeping. That's what's usher to do in front of each other. But things that are, the other types of things is okay to do. Okay.
just if there means in the room, not out of town.
Say that again?
You said not the fun. That means that
Yeah, in the
if you
same
are
room. No, just if he's in the room. If he's out of the room, it's okay. Okay, now just to mention also, there's an isser of histaklus be'ishto nida but the isser is on places that are normally covered. Places that are normally covered, when a woman's tahara, so there's no isser. If it's his own wife, there's no isser. But be'ishto nida there is. Now, when it comes to it, just to mention, when it comes to another woman, here it's one situation where it's much more chamer to be mistakel in any other woman, Eshizish, or even not an Eshizish, or Pnui, or anyone, to be mistakel as us, or even in a makom magul, a place that's always, even her face, her hands, or anything, a place that's always uncovered, to intentionally be mistakel is usher to do. But be'ishto nida, it's not usher. Place that's normally uncovered is not usher to do. It's what's usher is only places that are normally covered. It would be covered typically. Then he's not allowed to be mistakel when she is a nida.
Stop when it's low or stare.
Right. So that's a big discussion. Exactly what the level of histaklus is. One should try to avoid even glancing. It doesn't mean though that he has to leave the room anytime that she's not completely covered. About that she should make an effort to be properly covered, especially while she's a nida. But if while she's changing this and that, it's just make an effort not to look. He doesn't have to go out of the room or dafka turn his back specifically, as long as he makes an effort not to look. Okay, and the last thing to mention is, actually, I think it's the very first sif in Shulchan Aruch, but it's I left it to the end, and that is the isser of schok and kalus rosh. It says that one is not allowed to act in a very lightheaded, frivolous manner with his wife while she is a nida, joking around, and especially in a way that you wouldn't do with most people, or certainly not with another woman. You only do with your own wife because you're comfortable with that type of behavior is not okay while she's in nida. That's for sure. Now the question is, how far does that go? There are some poskim say that extends to even playing games, playing board games or the like. There's some say that that's part of the Yisr Schok and Kalas Rosh. Just interestingly enough, Shmuel first told me that Rabbi Michel held. This is not in that tshuva, but Rabbi Michel held playing a board game together is an Isser of Ka'ar Achas. That's what he said. Rabbi Michel told him it's also as Ka'ar Achas, not as Schok and Kalas Rosh. I never saw that in print, but this is what Rabbi first told me. This is that one. Other games, besides games which involve, let's say, ping pong and tennis, these types of games where there is some form of contact. You're not throwing something directly at the person to catch, but you're hitting a ball towards them, which they have to hit back. that some aser from that reason, but leaving out besides, it would still be part of the possibility of schoking halas roshos or aser games, but besides that, it's most aser it because it's in a form, even though you may be trying to hit the ball in a way that Shidavka can't reach it and can't hit it back, but so that's the way the game works, is each one hits it and the other one hits it back, so most poskim say that one should not do while she's in nida. Okay, that basically covers what I had written. As I said, that it's not necessarily an exhaustive list. So if anything I omitted, even if anything's very obvious or not so obvious, if you want, you could ask, but don't just assume it's okay. But I think this is a fairly decent overview of the harchakos.
Cover her hair.
While she's in nida, so it is definitely preferred. In general, it is considered a very basic and proper level of maintaining conditions of ice that a woman should have her hair covered at all times, particularly while she's in nida. If she doesn't keep her hair covered in the house in front of her husband, so then there's a makom to be mekel even while she's in nida. In other words, the definition of a covered makom, yeshom, means a makom that's covered even in front of her husband. Typically covered in front of her husband. If it's typically not covered, like she never covers her hair in the house when she's on in front of her husband, then it's makom to be mekel when she's in nida. But the mice, it's not recommended to do that at all. It's strongly recommended for a woman to keep her hair covered in the house, even in the house at all times. It's a very, very important and positive matreg and kedushas habayis, which is proper to maintain.
But are there poskim who permit placing an object onto my lap?
There are. I happened to look in Rabbi Forst's book the other night, and I believe he rings from the Chut Shani. This Kollel says it's okay. I believe he does. He brings two shitas. I spoke before I gave the shir. Actually, it's one of the things I asked one of the rabbanim I turned to, and he said no. So I said it over that way. But
That's different than putting it in my hand.
Is it different according to the Mekilim?
Right.
Yeah, I think so. Mekilim says different. Yes.
Why?
Because the normal way of handing things is from hand to hand, and it's more like putting it on her body. Again, I didn't look inside, but he brings the Chut Shani, and I think he brings two poskim, but one was Chut Shani. I guess putting it on her body is not the normal, not as normal, not as typical as in her hand. That's not called miyado liyado. But as I said, I didn't say it over that way, as you noticed. Okay, I want to thank you all for coming tonight and all the weeks, and anything you want to discuss, we're happy to.